Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we will be talking about Redshirts by John Scalzi. This won the Hugo Award in 2013, which really surprised me. But quickly, what is this book about? Redshirts is a postmodern science fiction novel by John Scalzi that is basically a parody of Star Trek, or you could say satirizes it. So let's go ahead and start with some of my overall impressions and thought about this book. And I mentioned in the very beginning that this was the 2013 Hugo Award winner, and that really surprised me because I kind of had a mixed kind of blah feeling towards this book. It was very much a 3-star book. It's fine, I liked it, I enjoyed it, but it is already a book that is out of my mind for the most part. I think there's definitely some commentary that this book is trying to have, but I think it comes too late into the story for me to really care. This is my second book by John Scalzi, the other being Starter Villain. It's the book with the cat on it. I think a lot of people are familiar with it because of that cover, and I had a really good time with that book. At the time of reading it, I saw somebody refer to it. It was Bart from Bart's Book Space. He talked about it was like a cake book, like it's a dessert, and I completely agree with him on that. That book, it's not going to make you think or anything like that. It's just kind of like a fun, whimsical, like adventure or science fiction story, right? This definitely has like a deeper layer to it in there, and I think it's the kind of book where maybe in retrospect I'll think about it more and really kind of dive in and think about what it is trying to say, and I'll get to what it's trying to say here in a minute. But my overall enjoyment of the book while I was reading it was, I don't know, it was fine. Like, I liked it, but it's just gone. Like, I honestly cannot remember a character's name to save my life. I can remember things about the characters and like what made them, who they are, and some like specific things about them, but like even just like their name is not something that I like. If I had to tell you somebody's name from this book, I could not. And I think that really just goes to show how there is kind of a shallow nature to this book. And I think, like I said, there's definitely something deeper, and I just don't know if maybe I didn't get the point of it early enough for me to really kind of like be involved in the book the way that you're supposed to be. When the reveal of the overall plot of this book happens, and then there's kind of like a second one that I don't know how I feel about it, if I'm going to be completely honest. It made me think about the book a little bit differently, but it's just one of those things where it comes so late into the story that I'm not sure it works the way the author wanted it to. Now, obviously, this won a Hugo, and so that means a lot of people somewhere liked it, but I'm just a guy with Wi-Fi who knows what I'm talking about. I don't have an English degree or anything like that, but I can tell you how it made me feel, and it was fine. It was a good time, but it's so forgettable. It's a whisper in the wind. It's come and gone already. Will be a book in 5 years. I'll be like, I read that, and like I said, there is a deeper theme here. I just don't think I had enough time to connect with that theme to really get anywhere with the book. So now let's get a little bit more into it. I'll go ahead and start with the prose/writing. And like I already mentioned, I don't have an English degree. This is not really something that I am overly qualified to I'm not going to be here like breaking down prose, but how I normally look at it is did it affect the novel or as a positive or a negative, or was it just kind of like there? The writing is there. And the only thing I really noticed about this book when it came to the writing specifically was, especially early on, it felt like there were so many choppy sentences where it was character one, it was like, they said this, and then character 2 said this, and it just constantly was going back from character A said this, character B said this, character A said this again, and it was just so choppy and disorienting to read that over and over again. And like a page, it would just be back and forth, back and forth. There was like no flow to it. It was super choppy, and maybe some people like that like choppy like part to it, but for me it was very distracting, especially early on. I think maybe it settled down a little bit, or I just got a little more numb to it as I went further on into this book. But that is just one thing I wanted to mention with the actual like writing/prose of this story. Next up is characters, and like I already mentioned, I don't remember a single character name from this book, and I think that just kind of goes to show that I didn't really overly connect with any character. There were a few like good moments, but over and over again I feel like there were supposed to be this really emotional, impactful moments, and I just didn't feel them. And you could say that like this is a very meta book. This book is like a parody of a parody of a parody, like satirizing everything. So like maybe that's the point. Like the point, maybe this book is so big brain 4D chess that like I can't comprehend it because it's supposed to be like, oh, you're supposed to care about this person, but actually you're not. So the fact that you're not caring about them is actually what is supposed to get across because of the whole idea of being a red shirt, which, if you know from Star Trek, like people in red shirts were the ones who always died. Like that was kind of like the big thing for Star Trek. They were like the forgettable background characters who died so that the main characters could look cool and, have all kinds of things happen. And so like, that's just kind of a revelation that came to me now while filming this video, that maybe that's the point. Like that's the whole meta point of this book, because like I said, this book is it's trying, I think, to be very meta and like self-aware and all of that kind of stuff. But the enjoyment of reading that, if that is what is supposed to be happening here, was not a good time for me. I'm not like a Star Trek person. I've watched some of the newer movies. I haven't ever watched any of the old shows, and like, it's fine. Like, I understand it is an extremely important, series and sci-fi and all of this stuff, and I probably should watch some of like Next Generation or Deep Space Nine and like all those. Like, I probably should, like, as a science fiction fan, like, go back and appreciate the classics like that. So maybe I'm the kind of person who missed some of these character things because they're callback to something I'm not like nostalgic to, have no references to, anything like that. So all in all, like, the characters are just kind of a jumbled mess of like, that one character is a little bit different than this one character, but there's a lot of sameness. And like I said, there is one kind of impactful moment with a character very late in the book that, I don't know, it's like almost there. It's like, if I'm like giving it the benefit of the doubt, maybe I felt a little bit something, but as far as character goes, it just did not do it for me. And I'm not always somebody who has to have like very strong characters in a book. Like I said, I still gave this a 3-star book. Like, I still like this book. I still think it's a good book. But yeah, there's just, to me, a lot lacking on the character front. And like I said, maybe that's part of the point of the book. I mean, especially when you think about its name and it's so self-aware and meta and just like all of that. But I don't know, for me it was just kind of like I don't know, I like to remember a character's name. Like, they should have enough impact on me that I remember who they are. And now we have to talk about the plot a little bit here. The plot is obviously based loosely on Redshirts from Star Trek, where they are, like I mentioned, the character who kind of died for the more important characters to fulfill goals and, aspirate, all of that kind of thing. And the plot is that we are following what is essentially a redshirt character, and something weird is happening the entire time. The entire time you're going through this story, the character is very aware that like something weird is going on, that something is not right over and over again. And that is part of the mystery of this story that I kind of enjoyed. I will say the big twist, the knowledge that we gain about what is going on wasn't the most satisfying thing to me, and maybe I should have seen it coming because what this book is based on with the whole red shirts idea from Star Trek. I think it worked fine. I do think that maybe some of the explanation of how things worked were very, I don't know, they just were there because they needed to be there. There wasn't like some great scientific thing going on here, which is not the point of this book. Once again, the point of this book really, and I think now is an appropriate time to kind of mention that while we're talking about the plot, is like the deeper theme that is going on throughout this entire book is the idea of like free will and like how much of life do you control? Is somebody else controlling you? Like predestination, like all that kind of stuff is what like the idea and the theme of this book really is. And you kind of figure that out early on in the book. It's not like a huge spoiler or anything, but I don't know. Okay, you kind of figure it out. I have said like that theme comes too late in the book. So I think because I have knowledge of how it ends, like the seeds are there. So maybe I'm projecting a little bit that it happens earlier in the book, because like the actual big reveal feels like it's 60-ish, 65, maybe even like 75% of the way through the book. I can't remember exactly where it is, but wherever it is, it feels like it's too late. I feel like it should have been brought forward more. And I don't know, I think when that plot started to happen, this free will plot started to happen, it really lost me. It's not something that I enjoyed as much. I mean, like I said, still a good book, still fine. But the plot and just like, I don't know, it's almost too meta. It's like almost too self-aware. It's almost too heavy-handed with this idea of free will. And there's like another extra plot twist of free will like later on in it. And I don't know, I feel like some people will read this and they will absolutely think that like it's brilliant. It's a great commentary on free will and like all of these kinds of things. Like, do we actually have it? Can people make choices? Is something else going on behind the scenes? Like all of that kind of stuff. Like there are going to be people who read this and I think really connect to it. And unfortunately for me, that's just not what happened. It was, to me, a fine book that was kind of like a bad piece of cake. Well, I mean, not a bad piece of cake, because this book was fine. It was like, you know those like sheet cakes you get for like a work party? It's like, oh yeah, it's cake, it's fine, it's good, like I'm gonna eat this, but it's not like a great gourmet cake that you would get for like your birthday or something like that. I'm trying to come up with a good way to phrase this. But that's the kind of story this is. It's like that piece of sheet cake you get at a work function that you're like, yeah, I'm glad I ate this cake, it was fine. But you never think about that cake again. And that is what this book is. This book is a good piece of sheet cake that, is enjoyable during the time. Somebody probably loves it, and some people probably don't want it at all. But for me, it was like, I'm glad I was here. I'm glad I had it. And that is, I guess that's really all I have to say about this book. I think that this is one of those ones where if you are a John Scalzi fan, you've probably already read this. And if you like some of his other books, like Starter Villain, or another popular one recently from him is The Kaiju Preserve, I think, if you haven't read this one, I think you should. I think this does have like deeper themes that you can really dive into, but his classic like John Scalziism is still in there, especially in the humor. There's definitely some of that humor that just even from reading just one other book from him that you can tell it is very much akin to him. But I think I'm going to go ahead and stop rambling about this book. For a book that is going to probably leave my brain in a year or two, I feel like I talked about it a lot more than I thought I was going to be able to, but it just kind of started flowing once I started recording. But if you have read Redshirts, please let me know what you think. If you have read any other of John Scalzi's books, definitely let me know. I'd be curious on if you have a path you think I should go after reading this one. He is still an author that I would like to explore a little bit more of, because this was good. Starter Villain I really enjoyed, so I feel like he's an author that, you know, some of his books might be a little bit more miss than hit for me, but it is still somebody I would like to explore a little bit more and see what he has to offer as an author. But as always, have a good one.